Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me again as I discuss the story of Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Before we jump into it, I just really want to give you a quick recap of what we've already discussed in part one. So right now we have got Drake, who has hustled quite a lot to get to where he is, and he sees himself, and a lot of people actually do see him as the person who is the leader of the hip-hop industry, and there were some people who weren't really sure about that because yes, Drake was commercially successful, but nobody really knew anything about him apart from the fact that he was a ladies' man. So he had the album Take Care that he dropped in 2011. And we were like, oh, okay, yeah, so maybe there is something to this. But then The Weeknd just came out and said that half of that album belongs to me. Those are my songs. So it was a bit weird, but we all moved on. And eventually Drake would release an album called If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. And this is again where he just goes through like this change and everyone loves that change. We're like, oh, okay, is this the new Drake? And then we find out that apparently he's got ghostwriters that wrote this for him. And having ghostwriters in the hip-hop industry is something that is quite looked down on. It's humiliating, but not for Drake. It turned out that his fans actually didn't give a crap about this. But he's also at the same time still calling himself the best rapper alive, which left everyone that is a hip-hop head like in a really awkward place, because this is in keeping with the traditions of hip-hop. And then we had Kendrick Lamar. He was an underground rapper for a very long time, and in 2012 he released the album Good Kid, Mad City, and pretty much everyone agreed that this is the guy. He is the guy that is moving this whole thing forward. And Kendrick didn't seem to really get along with Drake. Like, for a moment it looked like they got along. If asked if there is a beef, Kendrick would just say no, there is no beef. But there clearly was something going on between these two guys. Kendrick didn't have to say much in these interviews, but it was pretty clear that he couldn't stand the idea of Drake. Drake would try to sort of rekindle their friendship and sort of congratulate him and do like these cryptic social media posts, but Kendrick wasn't having any of it. But at the same time, Kendrick was struggling with his fame. So much so that he even left. He went to South Africa for a while just so he can get some time to breathe. But at the same time, he did also want to be the king. He believed that he was the most qualified person to sort of teach the traditions of hip-hop to the next generation. And I mean, like, teach them the true essence of it. But he was having his own personal battles, and Drake came right back in to claim that position. And that's where we left the story. So then we had 2018, which was a very eventful year in the music industry. This is the year when the beef between Drake and Pusha T like really took off. So Pusha T is a rap legend in his own right. A lot of people don't know this about him, but he's in his late 40s, and his music today sounds better than the music he was making a decade ago. And the music he was making a decade ago sounded better than the music that he was making in his 20s and his teens. Like, this is just something that baffles everyone about Pusha T. Like, he's one person that just keeps getting better with age. He's very much someone who grew up in the streets. As a matter of fact, he used to be a dealer. So his music is built on the stories that he tells from those experiences. And the people that listen to Pusha T's music, they are the complete opposite of the people that listen to Drake's music. Let's put it that way. The thing about this though is that when he was dealing, he didn't need to be. Don't get me wrong, like, his family wasn't well off or anything like that. It's just that he and his brother, No Malice, they wanted to just have nice things, so they dealt. And a lot of people use this against him, saying that he's a bit of a fraud, but those aren't people that listen to his music. This guy is all about that life, and he is a very respected person in the industry. So anyway, he and Drake didn't get along. Pusha T was just one of the people at the forefront of hating on Drake. He's always just questioned Drake's intentions when it comes to hip-hop, and the fact that he refers to himself as the GOAT or the best rapper alive, that doesn't sit well with Pusha T. So he was very vocal about it. But then the beef just reached a whole new level when Drake dissed him in the track Two Birds, One Stone, when Drake calls Pusha T's street credibility into question.
To get it, but really it's you with all the drug dealer stories. It's gotta stop though. You made a couple chops and now you think you Chapo. The middleman in this shit, boy, you was never them guys. I could tell cause I look most of you dead in your eyes, and you'll be trying to sell that story for the rest of your lives.
That's a very solid diss from Drake. So Pusha T responded to this in a track called Infrared. And
the bigger question is how the Russians did it. It was written like Nas, but it came from Quentin. At the mercy of a game where the codes is missing. When the CEO's blinded by the glow is different. Believe in myself and the cozy Kendricks. Let the sock puppets play and they roles and gimmick shit.
And this must have really infuriated Drake because he responded with Duppy Freestyle. And it was just a few hours after this was released, so everyone agreed that this was a good song over a good beat. Drake talks about numbers as usual, and he says that kind of makes him a better rapper. But then Drake drops the line that will be known as the line that changed the nature of the rap battle forever.
Look, holla at me when you multi-million. I told you keep playing with my name and I'ma let it ring on you like Virginia Williams. I'm too resilient.
So first of all, everyone was like, okay, was that really necessary? It doesn't even sound like it fits into the song. Pusha T thought it was a terrible line, but this didn't stop him from going full throttle on Drake.
Why would you mention my fiance?
Wow.
Like, no women, no children. What's up? Like, what we doing? You know what I'm saying? But, I looked at it. I was just like, it made me sort of dive in to like, oh, wait a minute. Who am I like really, really dealing with here? Like I say, I get up here. First thing you ask me about is the back and forth. So I'm like, yeah, man, it's competitive. Blah, blah, blah. Cool. You mentioned my fiance. You put a name in the song. Like, bro, she don't even listen to rap. Like, what are you talking about right now? What are we doing? When I heard when I heard the Duppy freestyle, I was like, okay. Now I have to like really analyze who this person is. And I got to analyze just questions like, man, okay, why would you put her in it? My fiance.
Yes, sir.
So then we had the 29th of May, 2018, the day that we got the story of Adidon. So firstly, the cover art of this track. It is a picture of Drake in blackface. Everyone was like, what? It wasn't clear if the picture had been photoshopped or anything, but you then go on to listen to the track, and Pusha T is just firstly pointing out all the ways that Drake is a mess. He says,
drug dealing aside, ghost writing aside, let's have a heart-to-heart about your pride. Even though you're multi, I see that your soul don't look alive. The M's count different when baby divides the pie. Wait.
He brings up Drake's racial insecurities.
Confused, always felt you weren't black enough. Afraid to grow it cause your fro wouldn't nap enough.
He talks about Drake's daddy issues.
Then his gram stay off the gram, bitch, I'm on one. You mention wedding ring like it's a bad thing. Your father walked away at 5, hell of a dad thing. Marriage is something that Sandy never had, Drake. How you a winner but she keep coming in last place.
And then we have the big shocker. Pusha T reveals that Drake has a hidden child.
Since you name drop my fiance, let him know who you chose as your Beyonce. Sophie knows better as your baby mother. Cleaned her up for IG, but the stench is on her. A baby's involved, it's deeper than rap. We talking character, let me keep with the facts. You are hiding a child, let that boy come home. Deadbeat motherfucker playing border patrol. Ooh!
This is a child that Drake had with a woman called Sophie Brousseau, who is a French artist that was previously an adult film star. And apparently Drake was planning on announcing his child in an Adidas campaign. So Drake didn't respond after this. Apparently he spoke to James Prince, and James just said, like, this is it, like, don't engage in this anymore. It's ridiculous. And this is what Pusha T had to say about the whole thing.
But because what I think is where they think that you went too far.
I don't care.
I
don't care. There is no too far. I don't play like that. So that's why you don't play with me.
Right.
That's why you don't play with me.
Right.
There is no too far.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
Forever.
Is there any
Leave
time?
it alone.
Is there
Leave
any
me be.
Leave me be, because there's no too far. Right. That's how it goes.
But
that's the thing. No, they won't play by. That's the thing. That's the problem.
You felt like you went too far?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I'd never go too far. There is no too far. There's no too far. Absolutely. Promise you.
Did you ever feel like that?
I never felt nothing. And anybody who ever told me that I went too far, I never spoke to him again. I was like, oh, shut up.
War.
A couple of days later, Drake released the following statement. His fan site, World to Road, released the following statement on his behalf. So he says, I know everyone's enjoying the circus, but I want to clarify that this was not from a clothing brand shoot or my music career. This picture is from 2007, a time in my life where I was an actor and I was working on a project that was about young black actors struggling to get roles, being stereotyped and typecast. The photos represented how African Americans were once wrongfully portrayed in entertainment. Me and my best friend at the time, Mazin, who also is an actor from Sudan, were attempting to use our voice to bring awareness to the issues we dealt with all the time. So we didn't really hear anything about his son until he announces it's in his Scorpion album after he says he'd done a paternity test. And Pusha T showed Drake once and for all that he's ruthless as fuck. And then in 2019, we had the famous Rap Radar interview where Drake sat down with Elliot Wilson and Brian B. Dot. He discusses the whole issue with The Weeknd.
Well, with Abel, we had our run. You know, we had our moments on Take Care, and you know, my features on his projects. And he just really came to me at one point, came to all of us and was like, look, like I don't want to sign under another artist because I feel like I could be just as big or bigger, and I want to start my own thing. And it was never like, I'm to this day, I'm always excited, always super happy for all those guys. And I never like had any resentment towards like, oh, you didn't stay on OVO. That was never really like, I'm not gonna say there weren't people that didn't feel a way about it, but that was never my thing. I never expected Abel to stay under OVO as soon as I heard him once express that he wanted to do his own thing. So it's like, my biggest regret would maybe be that we probably wasted 7 years not communicating with each other when we had something beautiful going on. You know, like OVO XO still could have been a thing, and still will be a thing, by the way.
Him having ghostwriters.
But that project's obviously riddled in controversy because of Quentin Miller, right? A lot of people feel like, well, he helped you with some songs, and even to this credit, I feel like you're still battling these ghostwriting rumors and this type of thing that in some sense, I think, does try to tarnish your legacy, whether it's effective or not. Like, how do you look back on that album, and does that still take away anything from that album for you, or how do you view it now when you look at it?
No, I really have, you know, I've really made my peace. I have no embarrassment when it comes to what I did on that album. You know, I mean, I worked with somebody on, I think 4 or 5 songs on that record. I pulled my weight when it came to my pen. It wasn't like I just, you know, it wasn't like I needed somebody to facilitate, you know, entire ideas. We worked together. And if I need to be the poster child that took all those hits for all my peers hiding behind me that do the same thing every fucking album, that's fine, I'll do it.
It's just so strange for him to say this. Like, the strange part is that he says he is the best, but he doesn't think that it's a big deal that he's also got ghostwriters. Can you imagine if we found out that Kendrick Lamar's got ghostwriters? And then they talk about Pusha T's beef.
Yeah, that situation just went, you know, it just went where it went, and it's just there's no turning back. It's not like those other situations that you mentioned.
Did Pusha go too far by revealing the child and presenting that to the world?
Well, I'll say this. I tip my hat to the chess move. I mean, it was a genius play in the game of chess. And definitely, you know, warranted my first quote unquote, you know, loss in the competitive sport of rapping. By choice, obviously, because I bowed out after realizing like the gap between us allowed him to drop, you know, a bomb on the world that really became, that was all anyone cared about. You know, I sleep well at night knowing I didn't get outbarred and I didn't get, you know, dunned off by some crazy song it was just, you know, he told the world that the biggest artist at the time has a kid that he hasn't told you about. So I knew kind of for me it was over at that point. It wasn't even about battle rap or any of that. It was just the information was too shocking. It was, like I said, it was on his part, it was a genius chess move. He obviously has no, like, you know, when it comes to me, he's not gonna have any like morals or respect. So I just realized that like nobody cares about this guy. So it's not really much I can say better than Drake has a baby. He won, you know, he won off that off that bomb, you know, and so again, you know, it's a dub that like, you know, he can take it.
Was that true that you wanted to reveal the child with Adidas campaign and things like that?
I wasn't. I had at the time I was working with Adidas, and we were toying with the idea of a name being the play off of a name, off of my son's name. I wasn't revealing my son with Adidas, or like I wasn't gonna have my son like, you know, fucking,
right.
But yeah, no, I was just.
Saying that Pusha T is beneath him and is irrelevant, his commercial success is something that he is holding over everybody in the industry at this point. And then in 2020, we had the Tootsie slide. And I think a lot of people looked at this and were just like, so is this what hip hop is working with now? And then in 2021, we officially found out that Rihanna and A$AP Rocky had started dating. So you know how Drake and Rihanna went on a date in Toronto? People noticed that Rihanna had like a shark tattoo on her leg and Drake had that same tattoo. But when these two got together and we saw Rihanna, she had removed her tattoo. And this must have infuriated Drake because he released a music video for the song What's Next, which is apparently a recreation of their date night in Toronto. He's in Ripley Aquarium, so the whole shark thing kind of makes sense now. And things get worse. He has a concert where they're floating sharks and he performs Baby Shark. So everyone's just like, is he like taunting Rihanna or something? Like, what's going on with this dude? And this is the time when Drake really started to unravel. Like, there were even stories about like, I don't know, people who like monitor his condoms, something along those lines. Like there was like a certain procedure that had to be followed when Drake was going to have an encounter with a woman. And then Drake would release a few more albums after this. In 2021, he released Scary Hours. And with this album, he became the first artist to debut on the Billboard charts at number 1, 2, and 3 at the same time. And he was honored as Artist of the Decade at the Billboard Awards. We had Certified Lover Boy for All the Dogs in 2023. And there are actually 3 songs that stand out to the fans where Drake was clearly talking about A$AP Rocky and Rihanna: Fear of Heights, Virginia Beach, and Another Late Night. So we'd see Kendrick here and there. He wasn't really releasing any music. He was mostly with his cousin Baby Keem. He was featured on Family Ties. And then in 2022, we had Dr. Dre headlining the Super Bowl halftime show where he was featured, but he actually won an Emmy for that performance. And then on the 9th of May 2022, Kendrick dropped The Heart Part 5. And people were really torn. I mean, there were people who were like, Kendrick, we are now in the hands of Drake. There isn't really anything that you can add to that. And there were others who are just like, he's just been gone for so long. Like, a lot has changed since he left. Has he even been in touch with anyone? Everyone was still happy to see him, but no one thought that someone who had been out of the game for so long would come back and just pick up where they'd left. But we'd all forgotten that we were talking about Kendrick motherfucking Lamar. The Heart Part 5 is a track where Kendrick again addresses a lot of things that have happened, that have caused a lot of pain, and things that have been, in his own words, covered and camouflaged, which then cause hurt people to hurt people. We see him wearing O.J. Simpson's face through deepfake, and then he is Will Smith, he's Jesse Smollett, Kobe Bryant, and Kanye West. So these are all black men who have either faced physical or social demise. And in the last verse, he's wearing the face of Nipsey Hussle, a fellow LA rapper who was unalived in 2019 while he was sitting in his car outside of a shop. He speaks to Nipsey's family, his fans, even the people that took his life. It made everyone realize that we've been through so much, but there is hope. So if you know Nipsey's life story and you listen to that song and it didn't evoke any emotion in you, then I don't know what to say. Like, it touched everyone.
That was like it was Nipsey Hussle speaking from heaven. I don't even understand what I just felt.
You know, I'm not going to edit around this. You know, I just want to say, like, Kendrick, man, I'm sorry I doubted you.
And one thing this proved about Kendrick was that not only did he still have his wits about him, but he's been paying more attention to what's happening than anybody else. And then, of course, we had the album Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and it was announced that this would be his last album under Top Dog Entertainment. So we have Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and this consists of 2 discs. Disc 1, The Steppers, is Kendrick kind of showing us what he's been trying to do all these years, which is basically addressing his issues, but him not using the best methods to do so. We have Father Time, Rich Spirit, and We Cry Together, which are all songs from that first disc where he sounds like he's trying to open up, but he really falls short of resolving his issues, and he realizes by the end that he hasn't been honest with himself and he's been living in a false reality to cover up his deeper flaws. He has so much potential and he knows that he's destined to do something incredible with his life, but he's now completely burnt himself out, all without barely even making a mark. And he knows that he needs to find love, and he just doesn't understand why he's been struggling so much to find it. And then we have disc 2. So Kendrick is now going to therapy, and the opening song, Count Me Out, is him giving us a bit more of an honest look into his life and the things that he has done. He isn't happy with the way that he's carried himself. He felt like he needed to be perfect. I mean, he was basically seen as the modern day hero, but at this point, he admits that he was wearing a mask. Then we have Crown, where he talks about the things that he thinks are love, being the moral compass for his friends, being the person that elevates black art, not missing a beat while doing all of this, and eventually getting the gratification in the end when he's achieved his mission. But then he comes to terms with the fact that, and he tries to put this in the nicest way possible, but none of this is going to get him anywhere. Everyone's just out here looking out for themselves, and he doesn't understand why that's okay for everyone except for him. During the Black Lives Matter protests, Kendrick didn't come out and make any public statements, and he was criticized by No Name for doing this. He was actually in the process of meditating during this time. He says that he needed to check out so that he could deal with his failures as a partner because of his infidelity as a cousin. In the song Savior Interlude, Baby Keem talks about some of the most difficult things that you can imagine that he had to go through as a child. And at this point, he had a cousin that had made it. So Kendrick blames himself about all the things that he couldn't see, the things that he wasn't able to do to uplift his family who also needed him. In To Pimp a Butterfly, he addresses how he failed as a brother and as a friend, and is still losing friends, who is still stuck in that life that is still very much a reality for the people who live in his hometown. And he says that he failed himself more than anyone else. The little black boy that speaks to him in To Pimp a Butterfly during his travels through Southern Africa, that child was him. And through speaking to that child, he realized that he needed to find love. And he's like, I don't even really love myself right now. Like, how am I going to find love? His personal life was really starting to fall apart. And at this point, he says that he needs to protect his soul. And he keeps repeating the words, I can't please everybody. So we get the track Silent Hill, which is basically him entering a place of solitude. And in this song, he features Kodak Black. Kodak is one of the most controversial artists that the industry has ever had. And guess who Kodak had a close friendship with? XXXTentacion. And you know what? Kodak actually got his cosign from Drake in his 2014 breakthrough track called No Flocking. And they've never really been mentioned in the same sentence since then, which is a bit strange, but I haven't found anything about there being a beef. So if you know anything about this, please let me know in the comments section. So anyway, Kendrick is basically saying that he's not this holier than thou celebrity. Kendrick is implying that he actually relates more to people like Kodak. And this is a very important song in the overall story, and we'll discuss it a little bit more later. But Eventually, we get to the song Mother I Sober. This is the breakthrough moment. It's him admitting to us that his savior complex has caused a lot of damage to him as a person, and he digs even deeper by admitting his feelings of guilt that he has had since he was a child. He talks about how someone was accused of touching him, and even though Kendrick said to his mother that nothing happened, she didn't believe him. And then one day, as an adult man, when he asked her, "Mom, why didn't you believe me when I told you that nothing happened?" She told him the story about how she was essayed as a child by her cousin. And at this point, she's so traumatized that she just doesn't trust anyone when it comes to that kind of thing. And in Mirror, the final song, he has laid his soul bare for the whole world to see, and he feels free. And I need to move on with the rest of the story, but I just have to say that I felt terrible writing this part of the script because this album is just so much more complex than I just made it sound right now. And it's such a big moment in Kendrick's story. In the end, Whitney says that she's proud of him because he's broken a generational curse. And you hear his children saying to him, "Thank you, Daddy," because he's now not going to pass any of this shit down to them. I remember listening to it and just thinking, like, this is so personal. Like, it's crazy. How can someone let us into their brain this much? And he got a lot of criticism for this. People were saying that it's just too deep, saying that it's hard to listen to. On the cover art of this album, you see Kendrick with Whitney, who, by the way, is engaged to him now. Kendrick announced this in a 2015 Breakfast Club interview. And in this album cover, we see that he's also now got 2 kids. So in the last decade, basically what has happened is that the 3 guys who are seen as like the top tier rappers in the industry, it's Drake, Kendrick, and J. Cole. So J. Cole and Drake actually united to make a track called First Person. Apparently Kendrick was invited to be in the song as well, but I don't know if he politely declined, but he declined. I think that the idea around him doing this collaboration is to kind of play on the whole thing of there being a big 3, and it's crazy how it's just those 3 guys. Yeah, so in 2023 they released the song First. And then in late 2023, it was announced that they were going to do the It's All a Blur tour. And they did. That's what they spent a better part of 2024 doing. Now, there is a line in the song First Person Shooter. And I'm sure if you're watching this video, you're probably already aware of what this line is. J. Cole does just as something to kind of acknowledge that Kendrick Lamar isn't there and to kind of like, I don't know, honor him, I think, even though he's not there. So he says that he talks about the big 3 in hip hop. They are the big 3. They have consistently been the top 3 guys in the industry for like the last decade. So it was pretty cool actually that someone acknowledged that the other person who's part of the big 3 isn't in the song, and it just kind of felt like he was giving him a bit of a nod. But also it is important to note that what these 2 are saying in this song is that within the big 3, Kendrick is at the bottom. This turned out to be a really big mistake.
Other side. And we don't care nothing about the other side. Period. All of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. TG Jakes, any of them. All lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way. The truth.
And then in 2024, we got the album We Don't Trust You, which was a collaboration between Future, Metro Booming, and a few other stars. And in this album, you get a song called Like That, and this particular song features Kendrick Lamar. So before we talk about that, let's just get into a little bit of the history of Future and Metro. So Future is an absolute legend. He is the 5th most streamed artist in the last 15 years, and he is from Atlanta. He is at the forefront of the Southern hip hop movement. He's inspired artists such as 21 Savage, Young Thug, and every time you hear a rapper that sounds like this,
My life is a movie,
That is someone who was probably inspired by Future. He also just had a really crazy story. He came from nothing. He had absolutely nothing. And he was so passionate about music and it saved him. Yeah, he's definitely someone that I would like to do a video about one day. Like, I don't agree with some of the things that he's done in his personal life, but I think it would be pretty cool to just do a little bit of research and do like a proper like deep dive into Future. So Metro Booming is one of the most sought after music producers in the hip hop industry. In 2022, his mom, who he was very close to, was unalived by his stepdad, who then unalived himself. And he went through a really deep state of depression and had to take some time off to himself. But by the end of the year, he was back and he released what people consider today as his best body of work, the studio album Heroes and Villains. And he's also one of the co-producers of the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse soundtrack. So Metro Boomin and Future are pretty close. And every time they work together, something really incredible always comes out of it. And this time was no exception. In 2024, they released the album We Don't Trust You. And this was a whole album aimed at dissing Drake. So it's pretty unclear how their beef with Drake started. They worked with him quite a lot in the past, but it doesn't sound like Metro Booming has ever liked Drake, like at all. There's a story about how Drake came into his studio when he was making sort of like the finishing touches to the Heroes and Villains album. And Metro is just like, hey, listen to this. He played it for Drake and Drake was like, oh, I want to jump into this. And Metro is like, no.
I was just in the studio with Drake one time because we were going to do some stuff for my album, and he just wanted to hear some songs from my album. Then he heard that one and really wanted to get on it. But like, I was letting him know that he was really just done for real, and I was really just set on how it was. I was like, bro, I ain't even trying to sell you no dream. Like, it's really like just locked in. I'm locked in where it was.
It's a really strange story, isn't it? It's either like Metro Booming doesn't like Drake, or Drake was just being a little bit more aggressive than Metro is letting on. So then when Heroes and Villains came out, Drake released Her Loss, which was actually a collaboration with him and 21 Savage. And Drake's album just kept winning Best Hip Hop Album pretty much in every award show that they went to, that they were nominated for. And Metro was really annoyed by this. So he took to Twitter and he said, Her Loss still keeps winning Rap Album of the Year over HMV, proof that award shows are just politics and not for me. I don't care about awards, honestly. The true award and reward is knowing that the music I spend so much time on brings joy to people's lives I don't know, Metro, it does sound like you care a little bit. And then, not long after he released this, he deleted the tweet. But it had already been seen by Drake. And Drake posted lyrics from Jay-Z's Heart of the City, Ain't No Love. And he would later do this famous live stream.
And to the rest of you, the non-believers, the underachievers, the tweet and deleters, you guys make me sick to my stomach, fam. Honestly, if you guys want to look in my eyes, you guys want to do something? That's what I thought.
Then we have Future, who was actually really good friends with Drake. And we just kind of like noticed them spending a lot less time together. And Joe Budden actually called it.
Back to my Future, Metro Boomin, Drake tension. Mm-hmm. You don't think it's weird that nothing ever happened with that fucking hit smash song that Future and Drake made with Tim's?
What do you mean? Nothing happened for you? It was a hit.
When you say,
it was a hit.
When you say what? I know it was a hit. It was a smash.
So what you mean? Nothing happened with it.
Never heard of it.
There were rumors that they were fighting over a girl. Metro quickly came out and shut that down. He said, y'all dudes stop making stuff up for engagement and enjoy the music. So everyone just kind of settled on the story that Metro and Drake weren't getting along, and Future just chose Metro over Drake. And as Future says in Metro's producer tag, if young Metro don't trust, I'm shoot. So back to Like That. This song has got the hardest beat. Future, Metro, and Kendrick, they seem like they are going to war. And of course, we are here because of the verse that changed everything.
I hope them sentiments symbolic. My temperament bipolar, I choose violence. Okay, let's get it up. It's time for him to prove that he's a problem. Niggas clique, think I won't drop the location. I still got PTSD. Motherfuck the big three. Nigga, it's just big me, nigga.
Okay, so Kendrick is so sick of people comparing him to Drake. He doesn't think that he is on the same level as Drake. He doesn't think that they are playing for the same team. I don't think he even thinks that they're playing the same sport. These guys aren't doing half of the shit that he's out here doing. The reason why the spirit of hip-hop is down to Kendrick, it's because of rappers like Drake. And none of these other rappers are calling themselves the best. Drake is. And he is the guy that's making more money than any of these other dudes. So Kendrick at this point is just like, fuck it. Let's settle this once and for all. Come and step to me. And the thing that really sticks out here is Kendrick is reminding Drake that Prince outlived Mike Jack. And over here is actually referring to the famous beef between the two icons. Both Prince and Michael Jackson were at the top of their game, but they stood for two completely different values. Michael Jackson was the huge pop star. He was doing numbers like you will not believe. Everyone wanted a piece of Michael Jackson, but Prince was the artist. He was the creative genius. He wasn't afraid to take his time to cultivate his art and to just like experiment with different sounds and different things. Like I was watching Little Bill, and he talks about how he heard a Prince song recently, and when he heard it, he was like, oh, it must have been like one of the last albums that Prince made. And then he looked into it, and the song was from the 1970s. That's how ahead of his time Prince was. And Kendrick is saying all of this over like the sickest beat. This whole moment was just perfectly calculated. And then you know what happened? J. Cole was the first person to respond. We had 7-minute drill. And this is basically J. Cole criticizing Kendrick for being an attention seeker. He says that Kendrick's not even relevant anymore, and he just downplays like all of Kendrick's achievements.
What?
Bro, y'all not turning on To Pimp a Butterfly.
To Pimp a Butterfly?
It's one of the most influential albums of the last 10 years, probably.
He said Good Kid, Mad City was classic.
Mr. Morale and the Big Step is he called tragic.
I don't know if it was tragic, bro. It was still cool.
I thought that was a good album.
The nigga album went #1. Go look at this stat.
And then he pulls the track like 2 days later, and he apologizes for it.
It's one part of that shit that make me feel like, man, that's the lamest shit I ever did in my fucking life, right? And I know this is not what a lot of people want to hear. I know I can hear my niggas up there right now like, nah, don't do that. But I got to keep it 100 with y'all, right?
And yes, he did get teased quite a lot for doing this. And then Metro Boomin and Future released the second album, We Still Don't Trust You. And this time around, there were more people who joined in on the project. We had A$AP Rocky, Lil Baby, Ty Dolla $ign, J. Cole, and The Weeknd. But I do need to point out that the only people who are here to take shots against Drake were A$AP Rocky and The Weeknd. And then we got Drake's response. So Drake released the song Push-Ups. It was leaked about 3 weeks after Kendrick made the diss. Apparently everyone could just see right through the fact that it was just Drake's team trying to test the waters before officially confirming that it was in fact a diss track that was coming from Drake. The name Push-Ups is used to mark the workout that Kendrick posted online, where he appears to be in a park or something doing like some burpee type of workout. The cover is a picture of Kendrick's shoe size, and Drake disses Kendrick over very Drake-like beats. Like this is like proper like Drake when he's like in gear, and I was a little worried. So Drake talks about Kendrick's contract with TDE.
When y'all cook up, extortion, baby, hope red, you can shook up. It's top, so you drop it.
And then he makes fun of Kendrick's height. And again, he decides to bring family into this. He mentions Whitney.
Hey, I be with some bodyguards like Whitney. Top say, drop your little midget ass, better fuck it. Hey, better drop it, give me.
So he brings The Weeknd and Rick Ross into this, plays with the whole Mike Jack and Prince thing. And the song ends with him repeating the word drop, 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 taunting Kendrick to respond like he's luring him into a trap. And everyone went wild when they heard this. Like, it did sound like Drake was like, okay, yeah, I heard your call, let's do this. And it was officially like on. And we even started to see like billboards of companies like actually marketing this beef. And then he tries to do Kendrick dirty. Drake releases Tailor Made Freestyle the next day. So this is another back-to-back release, and everyone just knew what Drake was trying to do with this. Like, he was trying to get Kendrick to respond as quickly as he can and try to trip him up, basically. But everyone who was like a Kendrick fan was like, well, why are you even trying to do that? Like, we all know that Kendrick doesn't give a shit about all that outside noise, so what's the point? But anyway, he uses the AI filtered voices of Tupac, who he knows is Kendrick's like biggest like idol of all time. And he uses the voice of Snoop Dogg, who is the guy that co-signed Kendrick as the new king of the West when his career started to take off. He's taking this idea that Kendrick has in his mind of California being like this place where he's like got people behind him, like it's been his home, like he's got a deep connection to this place. Drake is trying to snatch that away from Kendrick and say, no, you don't have California, you don't have Tupac. If Tupac was here, he wouldn't give a shit about you. Snoop Dogg doesn't give a shit about you. Your people, all these people that you think care about you in California, none of them. It's all just in your mind. And the name of the song, Tailor Made Freestyle. So Drake is dissing Kendrick about not dropping because he didn't want to drop at the same time as Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets Department album because he wouldn't stand a chance against Taylor Swift. Kendrick actually collaborated with Taylor on a record called Bad Blood. So he's teasing Kendrick Lamar, saying that you've done quite a bit of pop, Kendrick. You have dabbled in a bit of pop yourself, my dude. He brings up the amount of time that it takes Kendrick to write music, which to me isn't really a diss. Like, that would be a diss if he actually like came back with crap music, but we all know that Kendrick doesn't. He never made a crap song, like, ever. He also brings up the fact that Kendrick will probably use the angle of him being associated with young girls, which is an interesting thing to just put on the table. But anyway, Tupac's estate immediately threatened to sue him because he did not get this authorized. And also, like, how can you use Tupac against Kendrick? Like, even Tupac's family knew that. Like, why? So Drake had to take the song down. So at this point, Drake's diss tracks have not really said anything to me. I mean, there are two things that we can get out of this that maybe might offend Kendrick. The first being that he's short, which I'm sure Kendrick already knows, and he doesn't seem like he has a complex about it. I don't know, maybe he does. Or two, that Snoop allowed his voice to be used in the Tailor Made Freestyle. The rest of the industry kind of stood up against this. They all thought that it was very disrespectful for Drake to use Tupac's voice. Drake had released 2 songs at this point, and they were great songs, but they were pretty average as diss tracks. And it's weird because he's dealing with Kendrick Lamar. So now everyone at this point was like, oh my god, like, what's Kendrick gonna do? And time went past and the whole world was divided in this. There were people on Drake's side and there were people on Kendrick's side, except Drake had already dropped 2 songs and they had like some pretty hard beats on them, and Kendrick had not said a word. So Kendrick fans were starting to get worried. All we could do was wait to see if Drake was going to release a 3rd track, or wait to see if Kendrick was finally going to release something. And even if he did release something, like, is it going to be a good diss track? But you remember how in the first video we talk about how Kendrick, when he was still K. Dot at Centennial High, we spoke about how he was the kind of guy that you did not want to come across in a battle. Well, the 30th of April happened, and we had Euphoria.
Euphoria.
This happens to be the name of the HBO series about teenage hedonism, and Drake is actually one of the co-producers of the show. Kendrick calls Drake a master manipulator.
Fabricating stories on the family front, cause you heard Mr. Morale. Or pathetic master manipulator, I can smell the tails on you now.
Basically, he's saying that Drake is the role that Aubrey Graham plays to profit off of hip-hop, and he plays into Drake's racial insecurities. He says that he knows where Drake is going to take this, and he's going to fabricate stories about his family that he heard from the album Mr. Morale, not from doing his own research.
And then he says, don't tell a lie about me and I won't tell the truth about you. And you just like left with this haunting feeling from that, which is something that he said like years ago in the Hard Part 4. So now you're just like connecting things together. Then the beat of the song changes into like this hardcore trap beat, and Kendrick lets Drake have it.
About no reaper, nigga, I'm reaping what I sow. Okay, got a Benjamin and a Jackson all in my house, like I'm Joe. Okay, Hellcat.
He says that he actually liked Drake with the melodies, but he doesn't like this new shitty Drake that just tries to act tough all the time. He calls him out for using a V12, which accelerates weight loss. He calls him out for the Cease and Deceased that he did for Like That track. And he talks about the fact that Drake actually bought Tupac's crown ring. This ring was apparently on auction for about 15 to 30,000, but an anonymous buyer bought it for over $1 million. And that buyer turned out to be Drake. Kendrick says,
Those mistakes. Somebody had told me that you got a ring. On God, I'm ready to double the wage. I'd rather do that than let a Canadian nigga make Pac turn in his grave.
Ah, that's the rebuttal I was waiting.
He says that Drake can make fun of him as much as he wants about how long it takes for him to actually like drop albums. And he says, music's not the only thing that's going on in my life. I've actually got a son to raise, which is clearly something that you don't know anything about. This is the part when I like really started to listen. Kendrick Lamar says, I just hate you, Drake.
Now let me say I'm the biggest hater. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you sneak this. If I catch flight, it's gonna be done.
Every time you try to digest something that he said that was diss in the track, he was already on the next diss, and you just like...
Friends, if not Hawaiian W Melon. I don't like you. There's 3 ghosts left, and I see 2 of them kissing and hugging on stage. I love them to death, and in 8 bars I'll explain that for you.
It's actually fucking disgusting, yo. And then, of course, we have Kendrick's final words in the song. He says, this has been great, this has been a nice little friendly back and forth, but don't bring my family into this and I will not ruin your life. How about that? Sounds fair, right? Now, if anyone was ever worried about Kendrick, this shut it down. I was just like, this guy, he cannot actually do anything wrong when it comes to music. Everything that we know and love about Kendrick was in that song. The way that he writes, like, this was all so well thought out. We had these extremely well crafted lyrics, the diversity in the way that he illustrates. Like, I can honestly say that after hearing this, Drake's diss tracks, more than one track, just sounded like so one-dimensional. Yeah, he took a couple of jabs at Kendrick, but then Kendrick showed up and he does the thing that he always does. He just shows up and he reminds us who he is. And then we had Friday, the 3rd of May, 2024, the day that will go down as one of the best days in music history. We got 616 in LA from Kendrick, and over here, Kendrick is using the title that Drake usually uses for the series of songs when you're about to get rapping Drake. So this is the first thing that he does to get into Drake's head. And the second thing is that Kendrick is doing a back-to-back. That's Drake's thing. So Drake, without even having heard the song yet, is already on edge. And this is important. Anybody that has ever played or watched a sport will tell you that you need to get into your opponent's head. And then we have the cover of the track. So Kendrick makes sure that he shows Drake that he's in on something. And it looks like a small part of a bigger picture. So it's a warning from Kendrick. We don't know what's happening at this point. We just see a picture of Maybach gloves, but I'm sure Drake had an idea of what it was at this point. So I just need to make a point that the song has not been released on DSPs, apparently because of a sample clearance issue, which is such a shame because this song is gorgeous. It deserves to see the light of day. So in this track, Kendrick is basically getting himself psyched up. He's getting into gear. He's given Drake multiple warnings now, and so far Drake has not listened, and he's pretty sure that he's not going to listen this time around as well. So this is basically just Kendrick preparing his soul for battle. He mentions that he's aware that Drake has put out money to get information on him, and he didn't get anything out of it. He says that Drake can't Tootsie slide his way out of this one. And he ends the song saying that the people that Drake hangs out with aren't really his friends, and he might want to think about that before he makes his next move.
You know how Kendrick has been warning Drake about one thing this entire time? Keep it clean. Do not talk about my family. Well, Drake tells everyone to stay online. He tells Kai Cenat, a huge streamer, that he needs to stay on stream. And not long after this, Drake releases a song called Family Matters. So the first thing that stood out for me when I first heard Family Matters was that this was a far more superior track than Push Ups. We get to hear Drake rapping in different styles. The beats are awesome. The video was so well put together. Everything is like really, really cool, except for the lyrics. Drake says that Mad City was written by Baby Keem, who was 12 at the time, by the way. And then, of course, we have the lovely line where he says that Kendrick is always rapping like he wants to free the slaves. Wow, Drake. Wow. Of course, Drake did the one thing that Kendrick kept warning him about. He made a song about Kendrick's family, which was 100% him hitting below the belt. Honestly, no evidence for any of the things that he has said besides that Kendrick is a short guy. So he also just goes off and starts dissing other people. He disses The Weeknd, saying that any male person that shows any interest in his music is basically gay. I mean, I don't know why everyone's now also looking over the fact that Drake is now also homophobic. He disses A$AP Rocky, Metro Booming, and Rick Ross. Okay, so there are two main points that Drake wants us to get from this song. And the first point is that Kendrick's son isn't his. Apparently, it's Dave Freeze. And the second point that he wants us to get is that apparently Kendrick hits or used to hit Whitney. And this was huge. Everyone was like so shocked by this. He had no evidence. There was nothing that could actually prove that this has actually happened. But when we were thinking about like some of the things that he said about how imperfect his relationship was in the Mr. Morale album, it did kind of make us wonder a little bit like what actually happened in Kendrick and Whitney's relationship. But this is exactly what Kendrick said would happen. In Euphoria, he said, fabricating stories on the family front because you heard Mr. Morale. So, as everybody was just trying to digest what they had just listened to.
Did you hear that?
Drake dropped.
You heard it?
I expected it.
Oh, okay. You know you was talking about
My family.
Yeah.
I'm uploading now.
And then we had Meet the Grahams. So Kendrick releases this less than half an hour after Drake has released his song. And by doing this, Kendrick has taken advantage of the audience that Drake created. Remember, Drake told the streamers to stay online. Kendrick now has that audience and he's going to have the final word. And this song also serves to prove the fact that Kendrick knew exactly what Drake was planning on doing. And this sort of makes us believe that Kendrick might have actually really had someone in Drake's team that has been feeding him information. Like, this is clearly not something that has been put together at the last minute. It's something that he has had ready and prepared for a while. So the cover art is a picture from 616 in LA, and now it is zoomed out and you can see everything. It includes the receipts of popular jewelry store, the Nadine Gosson business card, the Attic dress shirt featuring the bulldog peeing on a fire hydrant, the Maybach horse riding gloves, a box of Ozempic, along with a Zolpidem prescription, which is a very strong sleeping tablet that is also known as the date drug. And all the prescriptions are in Drake's real name. And in the very first line of the song, Kendrick says, "Dear Adonis," and everyone is just like, oh God. In the song, Kendrick is basically taking Drake's entire family on a therapy session. He says that his dad is a horrible person who only takes shortcuts in life, and he offers Adonis to be his mentor. He says that Adonis should never cold switch. He says that you're black, even when it doesn't benefit you. Know that you are a black person and carry yourself as such. And to me, at this point, the beef was over. Kendrick is clearly trying to drive the point home that skin absolutely has nothing to do with any of this. Like, Adonis is clearly fairer skinned than Drake, but he's saying that Adonis is a black child. So he's implying that it's important for him to know how to carry himself as a black man, and he's offering himself as a mentor to Adonis, implying that he doesn't want him to act like his father, who basically gets to pick and choose when it benefits him to be black. And basically the only connection that he has with his black roots is one that involves making money. And then he goes on to speak to Drake's parents. He says that you guys raised a horrible person. He takes a bit of sympathy towards Drake's mom and says, like, you basically didn't have a choice. This was the card that you were dealt. But the things that he says to Drake's dad, oh my gosh. And then finally he says, dear baby girl. And at this point he's talking to Drake's second child, who is allegedly also being hidden. He apologizes to her and he says he wishes that he could be there for her as well. It's very important to note that there's still been no proof of this, and out of everything that Kendrick has said in this beef, this is the one thing that's still like sort of hanging on the balance of truth. But at the same time, Drake does have a reputation of being someone who just sleeps around with different women from all over the world, so it's not something that is very easy to dismiss at the same time. And not to mention that this is something that he's actually done before. So Kendrick, in this song, he is not talking to Drake anymore. He is talking to Aubrey, the man. He's saying to him that you're a piece of shit. Like, imagine having to sit down and listen to someone that's known you on a personal level at some point, someone who appears to have been monitoring you for years, talking about all your shortcomings as a man. Basically, Drake is everything that Kendrick Lamar has been trying not to become for the last decade. And he's a man who's almost in his 40s now, spending his spare time drinking, taking drugs, gambling. All he talks about is numbers and material things, and the only people he will keep around him are people that feed his ego. To Kendrick, Drake has completely lost touch with reality. And all of this is being said over the creepiest beat. This is all part of the strategy. This is a beat that came from The Alchemist, who is a white guy that had a middle class upbringing. But today, he is one of the most respected people in the hip hop industry. So this has nothing to do with color. It has nothing to do with where you were raised or how you were raised. This is about Aubrey Graham, the person. And he solidifies this by saying at the end of the song, like, fuck a rap battle. This is a lifelong battle with yourself. And then we had the 4th of May, the very next day. It was a Saturday and everyone was pretty sure that, you know, Kendrick won. But at the same time, you know, you can't rule out Drake. There'd be nothing. And then Kendrick dropped Not Like Us.
Monster on the beat, ho, Debo, rap nigga, he a freak.
Like, you know how in 616 in LA, how he says to Drake, like, I want you to show yourself to the world, reveal yourself. Well, in this song, Kendrick steps out and is like, you know what, let me show you Ken. And he makes a catchy, funny club banger diss track. Like, it's crazy because the one moment he's being accused for being too personal, for being too deep and making music that's hard to listen to. And then the next, he's got everybody in the world singing at the top of their lungs that the biggest rapper of our generation is trying to strike a chord, but it's probably a minor, allegedly. So the implication over here, the main implication, is that Drake likes little girls. We've all seen the videos, we've seen the pictures, we've seen him being a bit too close to girls like Millie Bobby Brown and Billie Eilish, just to name a few. They've both actually stood up for him, which is interesting because obviously a lot of time has passed and they have grown a lot. And people would always say to me, like, oh, they're defending him, so nothing happened. And I've always said in response to that, you know what, I bet you, like, I will bet you money that when these girls grow up and they have kids, and those kids are like, what, 13, 14, whatever, in their teens, and there's a guy in their 30s who is texting them and hanging out with them and just like honestly, I bet you that they will come out and say something about it, the same way that the rest of the world is saying something about them hanging out with Drake. And the really funny part about this is that both girls, since this song has come out, they have not said a word to defend Drake. So Kendrick also talks about Drake's friends, who are allegedly equally as perverted. He says Becca caught a weird case. Why is Drake around this guy? Becca Not Nice is a Canadian rapper who is Drake's ex-security guard as well. So he allegedly got arrested in 2014 for forcing a 22-year-old woman into prostitution. And then he took her money, which I'm assuming she made from the thing that she was forced to do. And it seems like it's quite a complicated case because the woman refused to testify and these charges were dropped. But he did plead guilty for assaulting her, and he pleaded guilty for an unrelated weapons charge. There's a lot of things that this guy's been linked to that I cannot even mention on YouTube. Go into my sources and there'll be some links in there. So anyway, Drake has been showing him so much support and love, like in his track, Know Yourself. He says, when Becca gets out of prison, I might declare it a holiday. He calls Drake out for being on Serena's dick. And in doing this, he's actually kind of standing up for all black women. Because everyone's annoyed that Drake's always dissing black women in his song. Like, black women were there for you, Drake, before anybody else. And then you get the third verse of the song and Kendrick really breaks it down. Like, the whole song is like really funny, upbeat, but when you get to this part, the mood kind of changes a little bit. He says, once upon a time all of us was in chains. Homie still doubled down calling us some slaves. This is the part when he says you're rapping to try and free the slaves. Atlanta was the Mecca, building railroads and trains. Bear with me for a sec, let me put y'all in the game. The settlers was using townfolk to make them richer. Fast forward 2024, you got the same agenda. You run to Atlanta when you need a check balance. Let me break it down for you. This is the real dude challenge. You call Future when you didn't see the club. Lil Baby helped you get your lingo up. 21 gave you false street cred. Thug made you feel like you're slime in your head. Quavo said you can be from the north side. 2 Chainz said you good, but he lied. You run to Atlanta when you need a few dollars. No, you're not a colleague. You're a fucking colonizer. The family matter, and the truth of the matter is it's God's plan to show you're a liar. This is him summing up why Drake is being called a culture vulture. Like, Drake does not seem to understand why anyone keeps calling him that word, but Kendrick just broke it down for him. In 35 days, the song had 300 million streams on Spotify, beating Drake's record where he had the same amount in 42 days. He took the thing that Drake had been holding over his head, the thing that he'd been using against everybody that tried to diss him. Kendrick took it and he smashed it.
You really jumped in this ring with a dog with rabies, nigga. You might need some shots now.
And then the next day, Drake released The Hard Part 6. So this isn't even really, it's not a diss track. It feels more like you're watching someone defending themselves in court. Kendrick had clearly gotten into his head at this point. The beat, though, was insane. You'd expect a really cool track to come out of it, but no. I think for like half the track, he's talking. He claims that Kendrick had been given fake information, and it was him and his friends who had planted this information. And again, there's nothing to back this up. And a lot of people were just like, Drake, why would you want to plant information about you liking little girls? And then he goes back to the whole Day Free thing and Whitney. He asked the question about why she isn't denying the allegations and why she follows Day Free on Instagram and not Kendrick, which is crazy. Like, why is a grown man in his late 30s talking like that? And then the following words were spoken that made most people stop taking Drake seriously. My mom came over the other day and I was like, mother eye. Oh, wait a second. That's that one record when you say you were got. Oh, fuck me. I just made the whole connection. This is about to get so depressing. This is trauma from your own confessions. This is when your father leave you home alone with no protection, so neglected. That's why these PDF file raps is shit you're obsessed with. It's so excessive. They're acting like it's so aggressive, but you just never known affection. I don't want to diss you anymore. This really got me second guessing. Touch My Body by Mariah Carey play, you probably start reflecting. I mean, firstly, like, this is like factually incorrect. The song Mother Eye is about the complete opposite of what Drake is saying. Kendrick clearly says in the song nothing happened to him. He was with, I think, his cousin, and nothing happened to him. But then nobody believed him when he said this. It was his mom who had struggled with something in the past. So it was finally over and we could all rest until the 8th of May. The media was abuzz with the news that there was outside of Drake's house and his security guard had been wounded and rushed to the hospital. So most people were like, oh no, this is clearly over the beef and this can't resort to violence now. And then the news started circulating that we were actually pretty clueless on what's actually going on in Drake's life. So this account posted on Twitter, I got the tea. The shit has nothing to do with Kendrick. The Weeknd's manager, Cash XO's mansion, was shot at last week by OVO, and the security guard ended up getting hurt. And the Weeknd's people, XO, reportedly spent the block at Drake's mansion. OVO and XO are at war. The exact same thing had happened at the Weeknd's manager's house 2 weeks ago. Like, there were signs everywhere that Drake was spiraling at this point. This was bad. So there were no more songs that came out, but in early June, Kendrick announced that his new record label, PG Lang, which is also his own record label, is organizing the Ken and Friends pop-out concert on the 19th of June, which is also known as Juneteenth. And June also happens to be Black Music Month and Kendrick's birthday month. Pop Out Ken and Friends was held in Inglewood, California. It was a one-off concert that had a set list of about 60 songs, which were mostly from artists from the West Coast. When Amazon noticed the ridiculously high demand for tickets, they decided that they wanted to live stream through Prime Video and Twitch. I was watching this on Prime and I couldn't believe seeing what I was seeing. It was beautiful. It was like watching a show that you've been invested in for so many years, like that has like a Game of Thrones-esque vibe. People just get taken out like left, right and center, but your favorite character makes it to the end. And they've gone through this like crazy character arc. And I can't imagine what it must have felt like being someone who was from California and actually growing up in hip hop and watching this. And when Kendrick Lamar came on stage, it was very evident that he was channeling Tupac. The whole look that Kendrick had is pretty much the exact same look that Tupac had in the 1994 Source Awards, even down to the chain that he was wearing. And the really, really crazy part of this whole thing, like, you watched the Crips and the Bloods on stage together.
Yeah, come on. Fuck that, this shit making me emotional, man. Fuck that, we've been fucked up since Nipsey died. Hold up. We've been fucked up since Kobe died. Hold up. Let the world see this. You ain't seen this many sections on one stage keeping it together and having peace. Hold up. This is unity at its finest. Inglewood, California, y'all did this. Los Angeles, y'all did this. This shit make me proud than a motherfucker, man. Y'all just don't know this shit get me emotional, dog. We done lost a lot of homies to this music shit, a lot of homies to some street shit. And for all of us to be on the stage together, unity from each side of motherfucking LA, Crips, Bloods, Power Rules, this shit is special, man. We put this shit together just for y'all. I'm talking about at rehearsals. Niggas are showing love and respecting each other. And this is exactly how all our father soldiers want to see it. Oh, man. You don't know. Oh, man. I don't know if you want to the world out there that don't know what's going on, I don't know what you don't know. The individuals on these stages, man, y'all come on, man. Y'all don't know how we put this shit together, man, and it's unity. Y'all just don't know, man.
And this whole vision that Kendrick has had since he was a little child of just being like the next sort of I don't know, messiah of hip hop, there it was, happening right in front of us. Kendrick performed 4 of his 5 diss tracks. Like That, Euphoria, 616 in LA made it to the list, and Not Like Us, which was performed 5 times. And he just let the beat of the song run in the end, so technically it was 6 times. So there are people who said that this was just a Drake hating party. Like, Drake just kind of happened to be the person who was doing the thing that misrepresents the culture of hip hop, and he was doing it on a bigger scale than anybody else. Then Kendrick's record label UNG uploaded the following picture, and it was captioned, "History was made," with a fire emoji. And UMG, as we all know, is also Drake's record label. Things get even crazier for Kendrick. On the 8th of September, it was announced that Kendrick would be headlining the Super Bowl halftime show. But there was also a lot of shade that came from this. Lil Wayne. And when he found out that he'd lost the bid, he didn't take it very well. And then in late November, we got The Hard Part 6 from Kendrick this time. And obviously this meant that a new album was about to drop. And on the 22nd of November 2024, we got GNX. People went insane. Like, we really weren't expecting this. And I have to say that for me, this was a really good album. I mean, I've been listening to it non-stop, and the more I listen to it, the better it gets. But at the same time, that is really unusual for me with a Kendrick album. Usually, like, I sit there, I listen to it, and straight off the bat, I'm just like, this isn't like anything I've ever heard. So I started thinking to myself that there's usually like a big meaning, that is something that I've missed. And so I went on the internet, and indeed there were a lot of conspiracy theories, because a lot of other people felt like I did, and people think that there's something coming, and GNX is just him setting the stage for us. Anyway, the album has 12 really cool tracks. On the very first track of the album, he gets a few things off his chest. He's just like Drake. There's plenty more where that came from. Snoop. Like, why would you do that? Why would you let anyone use your voice as AI? Why did you sign that off? Were you high? Is that what happened? And then Lil Wayne, like, I actually can't believe this. Like, I'm here because of people like you. You are one of the people that inspired me to be here. And everyone else, I've got you all figured out. Try come at me. I'm prepared for this. And GMX is very much a middle finger to the whole industry. And it's pretty funny because he gives Cat Williams a shout out for this interview.
Big Dick Deviance is all catching hell in 2024.
So Drake appeared like he was taking the high road and just accepting that he'd lost. He was seen here and there just minding his own business, and whatever unexpected from Drake was for him to lay low for a while and just come back with the best music that we'd ever heard from him. Instead, Drake chose to release 100 Gigs, which is an EP that was released in August, but this didn't gather much attention. And he was still very active on social media, still reminding everyone that he had a lot of money, and he was very focused on promoting his gambling company Stake through YouTube influencers. Then, on the 24th of November, Drake was on a live stream with XQC.
Here, as you can see, fully intact. Mind, body, and soul, in case you were wondering, right? Mind, body, and soul. Mind, body, and soul. You need facts to take me out. Fairy tales won't do it.
The same day, he filed a petition against his record label citing defamation. He is alleging that they inflated the popularity of the song Not Like Us so that they could damage his reputation. So now you might ask yourself, like, why would he say something like that? Well, there is actually a pretty good reason. Yeah, you heard me right. In 2020, Drake was a free man. He was basically in a contract with Universal, but this contract was about to come to an end. And there was a conversation between Steve Stout, the music executive, who's famously known for being hit on the head with a champagne bottle by P. Diddy, and a guy called Russ. So this interview set the internet on fire. They were discussing what Drake's next chess move would be.
If Drake right now, completely independent, if Drake right now posts a link on a picture on the gram of his new album, link in bio, it isn't fuck a link in bio, new album out, fully independent, Drake will make fucking $10 million a week for fucking 60 weeks.
By the way,
you know? It's like insane.
Drake is, I said this before, and it's about to come out in the next 6 months. Drake is about to get the biggest bag in the history of the music business by far.
He should.
Because well, A, he should, and B, they don't want that to happen. Because the day that happens, you might as well close the business down.
So you see, Drake was successful because of a lot of reasons, but we all know the key reason why someone like him would reach the level of success that he did, where he's the most streamed artist in the world, and why artists like Nelly, for example, or Ja Rule, back in their day, they were popular, but not to a point where we could say that they were the best rapper. The reason why Drake is like this is because Drake's team is full of marketing geniuses. They've gotten themselves to a point where we could actually question whether Drake actually needed a record label behind him. I mean, it is a thing though, that if you want your music to get to a certain level of popularity, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, there are certain things that you will need a record label support behind. For example, things like touring, and Drake relies very heavily on tours. Those are things that actually need like really big record labels. So people were asking the question, like, if anyone could actually try to go independent and try to do it as like this huge superstar, it would be Drake. And he'd probably struggle at first, but he could do it. But then what do you think would happen to all the other A-list musicians? This would be a huge eye-opener for them. And Drake, of course, would earn himself the title of being the person that changed the music industry forever, taking the power away from the big companies that rip artists off every day. So when he went into the meeting with Universal to look into a new contract, he definitely had the upper hand. And Drake, as usual, decided that he would rather choose the money. He decided that he would rather be remembered as the guy that walked away with the largest music deal that has ever been signed, a $400 million contract with UMG. But it's been rumored that in his deal, Drake actually got his payment upfront from UMG, and that UMG actually now owns the masters to his music until he repays everything. But anyway, this sounds like it's a terrible deal, right? But no, he went on to release 4 albums and I think 18 singles, and was earning at least 200 million just from streaming alone. He was basically just living on the road, doing tour after tour after tour. And you know about how he actually asked Kendrick Lamar to actually be on first person and how he ended up being on the It Was All a Blur tour with J. Cole? Well, that might not have been just a nice gesture after all. And the It Was All a Blur tour actually earned him over 100 million. And everyone who was paying attention noticed that Drake was now pretty much on the verge of settling his contract with UMG. Then the conversation started to shift back into people talking about how much they thought he would ask for on his next negotiation. Drake would have had more negotiation power. So anyway, Drake was accusing his label, which is also Kendrick's label, of allowing the song that ruined his reputation to be released. The song has basically got everyone in the world shouting at the top of their lungs that Drake is a PDF file, and there's nothing he can do about it. So now the thing is, Drake really does have a bit of a dodgy history when it comes to young women. It's in this concert, Drake is dancing with a young lady, and he eventually asks her how old she is. And she says she's 17, and he still goes on to kiss her. And of course, we have this really strange relationship that he had with Millie Bobby Brown when she was 14. And when everyone pointed out that it was strange, Millie released the following statement. Why you gotta make a lovely friendship your headline? You guys are weird, for real. I'm lucky to have people in the business extend their time to help me further my career and offer their wisdom and guidance. I'm very blessed to have amazing people in my life. You don't get to choose that for me. It's nice to have people understand what I do. Now, get back to talking about real problems in this world, other than my friendships. Jeez. And he also had a really close relationship with Billie Eilish when she was about 17. Billie also came out and spoke for him when everyone was a bit worried about their relationship. She did an interview with Vogue magazine where she said, "The internet is such a stupid ass mess right now. Everybody's so sensitive. A grown man can't be a fan of an artist. There are so many people that the internet should be more worried about. Like, you're really going to say that Drake is creepy because he's a fan of mine?" and then you're gonna go and vote for Trump. What the fuck is that shit? Drake also apparently took an 18-year-old model, Bella B. Harris, on a date, allegedly. But the media also said that this was in DC. So she came out and said that she wasn't even in DC at the time. She was in New York for Fashion Week. I mean, we're talking about someone that also has a private jet. So anyway, people started looking through her Instagram and noticed that there were a lot of photos of them together. And this photo is where she's modeling his OVO line in 2016 when she was 16. And this has a comment from Drake with heart eyes emojis. And there's one situation that I remember, and I'm just mentioning this to convey how prevalent his reputation of being a sexual predator has become. So I remember between 2020 and 2021, Amapiano started trending outside of South Africa. And Drake had the weirdest obsession with Uncle Waffles. Like, she is a very talented DJ who worked very hard to get to where she is. And she was everywhere during this time. But Drake just kept popping up on her social media. And at the time, she was about 20 and Drake would have been about 34. And the general feel of people in South Africa was just like, I mean, dude, come on, maybe collaborate and then move on. You don't need to constantly be on her case. And don't even get me started on some of the lyrics from his music. Like the song Jaded from his album Scorpion. He says, "You had potential, I could have shaped it. You went and caved in, we could have waited. I wasn't rushing, different in ages. You're old enough, but you're still a baby. You've shared stories where you've been amazing. Things to be loyal, things to be patient. That was before me. I must have changed it. Shifted your focus, lens looking jaded." I mean, he's definitely not talking about Uncle Waffles. Uncle Waffles has been in a very long-term relationship with her boyfriend, who I think is also a manager. But it would be pretty interesting to know exactly who he was talking about over here. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we're traumatized by all the people who've recently been caught doing things while they were pretty much hiding in plain sight. But also, if those situations have taught us anything, is that where there's smoke, there is fire. And I will leave it there. So anyway, Drake was also saying that UMG used bots or fake streams and payola schemes to boost the popularity of the track Not Like Us. Now, there are a couple of things to note in these accusations, and that's that number one, he says that UMG collaborates with Spotify through strategic marketing campaigns, and in 2024, their plan was to amplify their partnership, where Spotify would amplify their music discovery and social interactions across the platform for UMG's artists and songwriters. Number two, UMG also lowered the licensing rate for Not Like Us by 30%. In exchange, Spotify would recommend the song to users who were searching for unrelated songs and artists. And number three, he claims that they used bots to basically pretend that the song had 300 million streams to make it more popular than it was. And number four is the part that really got the internet laughing. Like, over here, he says that streaming and licensing is a zero-sum game. Every time a song breaks through, it means that another artist is not. UMG's choice to saturate the music market with Not Like Us comes at the expense of other artists. He says that UMG actually offered to work with him if he filed a lawsuit against Kendrick. The very next day, UMG released a statement through Variety saying, "The suggestion that UMG would do anything to undermine any of its artists is offensive and untrue. We employ the highest ethical practices in our marketing and promotional campaigns. No amount of contrived and absurd legal arguments in this pre-action submission can mask the fact that fans choose the music they want to hear." And then on the 15th of January, it was announced that Drake had dropped the case. His company announced that he'd met with Spotify and UMG, and Spotify was happy with this. They confirmed that they had no objection with the discontinuation. But UMG didn't say a word about this. And pretty much everyone started turning their back on Drake. It was just seen as something that was extremely appalling to do. Even DJ Academics stopped singing Drake's praises. If you know anything about Drake, then you know who Academics is. He started as a Drake fan that was hyping Drake so much and kissing ass like there's no tomorrow, and he basically weaseled his way into Drake's crew.
What does a win for Drake look like with this? Well, let's just start spitballing shit. I see some of his fans say, nah, he gonna get $1 billion. Great, at the expense of his own career.
There was someone who actually called in on the stream and was like, I was the person that helped Kendrick use the bots. And Academics was even like, I mean, dude, your story just doesn't add up. And then we received word that Drake had officially filed a lawsuit against UMG. So let's go over the key points. It says that a single lie can destroy a reputation of integrity, and while it takes years to build a reputation, it can be ruined in 5 minutes. And then he talks about the incident when someone opened fire at him or his house, and the next day an intruder came and tried to dig a hole underneath his fence, and he actually did do it. He squeezed through the hole, and he says that things like that would have not happened to him. They've never happened to him before, not until after this track.
Continuing on, this is kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna be interesting to see who did this and what happened in this situation, because we don't know fully. But you know, Drake has been going at The Weeknd. Drake mentioned in push-ups Cash XO, who's The Weeknd's manager, and took shots at him on that track. Apparently, he had his home targeted by a shooter. So I hope it's not from the beef that's going on right now, but the timing of that is very interesting.
And then he talks about like how UMG's contract was nearing its fulfillment. Like he actually makes that. And then he explains how these false allegations were being spread out by UMG. He says that the recording inflammatory and shocking allegations that were a gold mine, spreading defamatory material served multiple business purposes for UMG. First, the more people who listened to, streamed, watched, and downloaded the defamatory material, the more money UMG and its executives would make. He says that with palpable physical threat to Drake's safety and bombardment online, harassment, Drake fears for the safety and security of himself, his family, and his friends. Was Kendrick not the person who said, let's leave each other's families out of this? Was Drake then not endangering Kendrick's family by repeatedly talking about them in his music? And then he says that the record was promoted significantly, and he even mentions the Instagram post that UMG made, as if the head of social media at UMG, the company that is also responsible for Kendrick, would miss the Ken and Friends pop-out show. The head of social media would miss that and not take a picture of it and not post it on any social media because it would upset Drake. And then he goes on to talk about how he believes that payola was used and bots. Payola basically is something that you do if you're trying to get your music illegally played. And it's just like, okay, so let's say that all of that is true. Let's say that the bots and the payolas did happen with the song. Are we supposed to think that Drake has never benefited from this?
I'll tell you one further, and I'm gonna be honest, and I haven't said this, and I was approached during the battle by a team connected with the OVO side and asked me to show the boys some love. You know, again, I was being as unbiased as possible. I was calling it like I said, but they asked me, yo, we know you're unbiased. Really said it. We know you're unbiased, and we like that you're unbiased and you really try to call it straight, but can you show the guy some love? And no money was offered. No, absolutely no money was offered. But you know, they kind of offered some things, some information, some access, and say, yo, and we'll make it that you could play his songs in your videos. You know, we'll whitelist it. Ultimately, I declined.
And then he said that the music did not have any copyright restrictions on YouTube, because Kendrick apparently wanted YouTube reaction channels to promote it, which is the funniest part, because the only reason why most of the streamers were online on Friday, the 4th of May, was because they were there to watch his video. And not to mention that another YouTube streamer or reactor called Screwface John was polite enough to share with us that one of his videos where he's reacting to Drake's song Push Ups, that doesn't have any copyright restrictions. So Drake received a lot of backlash for this. Like, everyone online is talking about how bad this all looks for Drake, and the only thing we could do was wait and see if he could manage to actually sabotage the Super Bowl for Kendrick, because it looked like that's all he was trying to do. And a week before the Super Bowl, we had the 67th Grammy Awards, where Kendrick was nominated for 7 awards and he won 5, including Song of the Year for a diss track. This is something that has never happened before. And everyone's also talking about how crazy it is that he is the first artist in the history of music who has gone from being in the middle of a really famous rap beef. He wins the battle, and then he goes on to go to the Grammys and he does like a full sweep. Well, apart from the 2 songs for Best Rap Performance on Like That and Best Rap Song. And now he's about to go to the Super Bowl. No artist has ever done that before. Kendrick Lamar is the first. So leading up to the Super Bowl, the one thing that everyone could agree on was that Kendrick would have something up his sleeve. So before we start this breakdown, I just want to remind you that this is someone who won the Pulitzer Prize. Everything that he does is thought out, and he demands that his audience use their brain when they watch or listen to his music. So he is at a point where he is considered to be one of the most incredible live performers of this generation. And then on the 9th of February, after listening to every single media outlet trying to speculate on what he'd be getting to, the wait was finally over. Well, unless you don't live in America like me and you had to wait until the 10th of February. The performance starts with us being welcomed by Uncle Sam, who is played by Samuel L. Jackson. Remember we spoke about Uncle Sam briefly when we broke down To Pimp a Butterfly in part 1? Well, to remind you, Uncle Sam was American capitalism. Well, here he tells us that we're about to play the great American game. The stage seems to be set up in a Sony video game controller, and by American game, he means that Kendrick is going to conform to society. He's going to give the audience a nice, clean performance of the most commercially successful songs like everyone else has done on that stage. But when we were introduced to Uncle Sam and To Pimp a Butterfly and he was planting all these ideas in Kendrick's head, what did Kendrick do? He did the complete opposite of what he told him to do. Then we see Kendrick in a kneeling position on top of the hood of a GNX. And the position that he's in may be significant. I don't know, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But he starts rapping some lyrics from an unreleased song, which he also used in the teaser of the GNX album. Then loads of people start coming out of the car dressed in white, red, and blue, the colors of the American flag. And then he gets up and he says, "The revolution is about to be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy," which is from a Gil Scott-Heron poem. And you just kind of know at this point what's about to happen. We're about to get full-blown Kenny. And he's going to do this in the presence of Donald Trump, who's just been re-elected as the president of the United States. The first song that Kendrick performs is Squabble Up. The dancers are in different parts of the stage and they start to make a formation, but Uncle Sam comes back and he says, "No, you're too loud, too reckless, and too ghetto." He asks Kendrick if he really knows how to play the American game and tells him that he needs to tighten up. And I just need to point out the significance of Samuel L. Jackson playing Uncle Sam here, because he had a really similar role in Django Unchained, the role of the bootlicker called Stefan. But in real life, he's really far from being that character. He is very heavily involved in Black activism, going back to his childhood. I believe that he even served as an usher at Martin Luther King's funeral. So anyway, Kendrick and his dancers get into a more controlled position, and as the camera pans out, you see that they are now actually the American flag, and Kendrick performs Humble, which is one of the most commercially successful songs that he's had, showing that he does know how to play the game. But it's at this point where you get what is probably the most symbolic moment of his performance. If you look closely, you'll notice that all the female dancers have left the stage and all the people in the flag are all black men. And this can be interpreted to say that America was built on the backs of black men. And at this point, they are supposed to be conforming and the dancers are in a more controlled manner. They're acting more like robots. But there is a point where they make a really brief black salute. But then he goes on to say, "Be humble, sit down." And it's crazy because it's almost like he wrote this song specifically for this moment, a song that was released in 2017. Then we get Loyalty, which is kind of him checking himself back. And then he performs the second verse of Euphoria, where he's pretty much in sniper mode. And yep, that part of the song. And from my opinion, and many others, I think the attention turns back to Drake for a moment. And then you see the words "warning, wrong way" appear in the back. And he goes into another track from his GNX album, Man in the Garden, with his dancers kind of sitting in the corner of the street underneath a lamppost wearing grills. And one of them is wearing a cap that has the word Peekaboo written on it. Man in the Garden is a track where he talks about everything that he does from the moment that he wakes up that makes him deserve to be in the position that he's in today. And the song ends with him looking straight at the camera saying, "Tell me why you think you deserve to be called the greatest of all time, motherfucker." Then Uncle Sam comes back and he says, "You brought your homeboys with you, the old culture cheat code." And he looks at the camera and says, "Scorekeeper, deduct 1 life," while the song Peekaboo is brewing in the background. This is something, again, that you will want to remember for the next part that we're going to discuss. Then he performs Peekaboo, and now he's 100% turned into the boogeyman. There is a part where he pops up on the camera, which made me laugh so hard when I first watched this. And the female dancers reappear, and Kendrick walks up to them and he says, he wants to perform everyone's favorite song. And then again, he looks at the camera and he's just like, "But you know they like to sue." And he looks straight at the camera and gives us the cheekiest grin that I have ever seen while he teases us with the instrumentals for Not Like Us. But then he checks himself again and he performs the track Luther with SZA while the dancers again get into a more unified position. At this very moment, this track is #1 on the Billboard 100, and SZA, her voice is insane. Then they perform All the Stars from the Black Panther soundtrack, which I think peaked at #7 on the Hot 100 in 2018. And then Uncle Sam pops up again and he's all smiles, saying, "Now this is what America wants, nice and calm Kendrick." And just as he's about to say, "Now don't ruin it," Kendrick snaps. Not Like Us is about to come on and he says, "It's a cultural divide, I'ma get it on the floor. 40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music. Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence." And then of course he breaks into this song. And if you were like me watching this, you were absolutely going insane. He nailed this for me. The part when all the dancers dropped and the only people that carried on dancing were the inner circle, that just made me go insane. And then him looking at the camera with that grin again, saying, "Hey Drake, I hear you like them young." And I honestly lost count of how many times I saw this being made as a meme over the last few weeks. And of course, the part that never gets old, hearing everyone in the stadium screaming at the top of their lungs, trying to strike a chord, but it's probably A minor. And bringing Serena Williams in was a genius move because not only is she Drake's ex, but she is someone who has gone through a lot of similar things to what Kendrick has been through. So she did the crib walk after her victory at the 2012 Wimbledon, and the media just tore her apart, saying that she's basically promoting gangs. And yes, Kendrick and Serena both don't like Drake, but this moment is so much bigger than Drake. She's at a point in her life where she doesn't care anymore. No one can tell her where she can and where she can't walk anymore. Kendrick ended this performance in a moment that I was really hoping for, with DJ Mustard joining him on stage performing Turn the TV Off and giving everyone a chance to scream at the top of their lungs, Mustard! And he ends the performance by switching the TV off and the words "Game Over" pop up. To me, this was a brilliant performance, and I do have to say that the dancers absolutely smashed it. Like, they were brilliant. But I do have to say that there is something else that is worth mentioning about this performance. Before we get into this, I just want to stress that nothing has been proven. These are all speculations. Kendrick likes to leave little hidden messages in his music, and if you look a bit closer, you might start to think, along with countless other people out there on the internet right now, that Kendrick might believe that Drake was a bit involved in what happened to X, allegedly. Let's look into the hidden messages that trickle down into the Super Bowl that may or may not have been Kendrick trying to hint that Drake is connected. So, number one, the song Silent Hill from Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers featuring Kodak Black. So, as already mentioned, Kodak and X were good friends. It basically all started with X just really being drawn to Kodak's music and his story. Kodak was facing some pretty serious jail time, and X was always going on and doing live streams about it. He spoke about the case, breaking down the evidence, and basically saying that it's all because of a system that is really rigged. So there's also a really famous video of the two of them FaceTiming, and X is saying to Kodak, like, listen, we need to stop the cycle. And Kodak has had a lot of run-ins with the law, but people generally like him. Like, he doesn't seem like he's an asshole at all. He also just had like a really crazy childhood where his brother was a very high-ranking gang member, and Kodak kind of tried to pull himself away from it at a very young age. And he started recording music when he was 10, and his entire hood backed him up. So he has a really interesting story. So anyway, X and Kodak became good friends, and they were both from Florida. Their music was starting to blow up around about the same time, and they were both repeatedly getting arrested. Eventually, they came together and they made the track Roll in Peace, which is a track that has made my top songs playlist on Spotify every year without fail. Like, I cannot stop listening to that song. And they're planning on doing a lot more work together, but then Kodak got arrested again in January 2018. And while he was in prison, X got unalived. Now, one of the people who were linked to X's unaliving was a young man called Deirdrick Williams, who also happened to be Kodak's tattoo artist at some point. So they knew each other. So Deirdrick got arrested for this, and they put him in Broward County Jail, which is where Kodak was also being detained. So they apparently had a conversation about what happened, and apparently it went along the lines of Deirdrick saying that he was actually employed by someone to do what he did to X that day. So Deirdrick's lawyer has been trying to obtain the footage or some sort of video surveillance that can prove this. He did file a subpoena, but he didn't get very far with that. It's a very shady story, and I mean, we're also talking about someone who's facing life in prison, so it's hard to say, but like, it's weird. People are actually like really torn about this. So there are people who are just absolute legends, and they're from a podcast called Thought Crimes, and they picked up a few things that were said in the song Silent Hill. So the song goes like this: know the results, the ballots are in, man, I'm about to boom again. You funny dog, peekaboo, can't hide behind your money, dog. So I'm not sure if they are the first people to come up with this theory, but they have linked this verse to the video of God's Plan, where Drake is going around handing money to people in the streets of Florida. People started asking, what was Drake really doing there? Because not long after this, X uploaded this. And that word peekaboo pops up again in Kendrick's GNX album in the song Peekaboo, where Kendrick is basically being the boogeyman, which is a persona that he's using throughout the beef to intimidate Drake. So at this point, we could still be getting the wrong end of the stick. But then fast forward to 2024, where Kendrick is now in the beef with Drake. Kendrick waits 17 days to respond to Drake's diss track. 17 is the name of X's last album, the one that Kendrick promoted online. And Kendrick also mentioned that he has listened to this album 5 times. And you know how he repeatedly performed Not Like Us at the pop-out show? He performed it 5 times. Okay, and then of course we get the GNX album where we've got track number 9 called Peekaboo. This track starts with a sample from the Lil Beaver song called Give Me a Helping Hand. So, can you guys jog my memory and remind me who is famous for doing something called the Helping Hand Challenge?
Okay, guys, so I'm going to be starting a challenge. It's called the Helping Hand Challenge. And in this challenge, the way to
Then fast forward to the 2025 Super Bowl. First off, that crouching position that Kendrick is in, this is the position that X was in when he did his BET Cypher performance.
And if the world ever has an apocalypse, I will kill all of you fuckers. Fear will be plentiful, death will be bountiful. I will spare none of you peasants.
And at this point, if you're still not convinced, then get this. So during the performance, in the part when I said that Kendrick kind of decides to turn his attention to Drake, after the line, "Tell me why you think to be called the greatest of all time," he walks away, and then the Helping Hand intro for Peekaboo starts to play. Samuel L. Jackson comes back and he says the whole thing. You brought your homeboys with you. He ends that with looking straight in the camera, just as Peekaboo is about to start. And he says, "Scorekeeper, deduct 1 life." And if you still aren't convinced and you need things to be a little bit more clear, well, he performs the track Peekaboo in an X that is now red, and the X is placed on the 30-yard line, and he's showing the number 30 as he's performing. And what is number 30 in Roman numerals? XXX. So if you're not convinced by this, that's fine. We can leave it there. It's just very much something that can be left to interpretation. But I do think that Kendrick is at least trying to honor X in this performance. I truly believe that his passing had a huge impact on Kendrick, because if you really look into X's story, like, he was a child that grew up with all the odds stacked against him, and he becomes a product of his environment and finds himself getting into trouble a lot. He knows that this cannot be his life, and he tries to fight against the system, and he does it. By the time he's 20 years old, he's a self-made millionaire. But guess what? It still doesn't matter, because there are still people that want to cut the legs off him. And one day, a few guys just run up to him, and you have lost your life. It's pretty much everything that Kendrick talks about in his music. And I can imagine that he was absolutely devastated when this young man that he was trying to help ended up like this. And I can also imagine that if Drake really is making fun of the whole situation through his music, that wouldn't sit well with Kendrick. But do you guys think that it's worse than that? So that's all we have so far in this story. And like, regardless of whose side you're on, whether you're a Drake OVO fan or Kendrick Lamar fan, this is the wildest story that we've all ever witnessed in the history of music. And I think that this is the start of everything. I think that we didn't just go through all of this so that it could just be left like this. Something's definitely going to come out of this. Whether it's negative or positive, we will see. But one thing that's pretty evident is that Kendrick is in sniper mode. I just look at Drake when he was like little in all these videos when I was putting all of this together, and I was just like looking at the little boy and thinking to myself, like, if he had a chance to do this all over again, would he do it? It's interesting. But anyway, I guess that we'll never know. What we do know is that we will be keeping a very close eye on this. So that's me anyway, and take care of yourselves, and I will see you guys again soon. Really appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Bye.